Okay, so we are recording, and welcome and thank you for joining us. I know it is nice and sunny outside, at least it is where I am. I hope that it is sunny where you are too. My name is Nina Cunningham. I'm the Head Start State Collaboration Director at the Department of Education, and my role's a little bit different than what many of you are, so I will open the floor to Decca, who is going to be leading our discussion today. As we go through, if you have questions, comments, feel free to put it in the chat and I will monitor those as we go along. I'm going to make sure that everybody is on mute so that way we don't get all that fabulous background noise. Let's see, we collected, if you participated last week, we did collect some of the questions that were asked and are pulling together a Q&A sheet that we will be posting. That way, if there are any unanswered questions, that we can address them as best we can. Unlike you, or much like you, we are still trying to figure things out as we kind of move forward. So we will do the best that we can. You will also receive a certificate for contact hours if you need them. At the end of this presentation, I will post the link in the chat. That way you can fill out, I think it's 3 or 4 questions. That way you can receive a contact certificate at the end. I know that some of you have been emailing me and I've been trying to keep up with the emails, making sure that you all get your time. So if something happens and things don't work, feel free to reach out. All right, so I will let Decca introduce herself. Decca.
Okay, thank you, Nina, for driving this PowerPoint for us today. Hello, everyone, and thank you for participating in our webinar today. Those of you who were not last week, my name is Decca Dalak. I am the new, well, it's been 5 months now since I started working for the DOE. I am the Family Engagement and Cultural Responsiveness Specialist. Prior to my working for the DOE, I worked for the City of Portland. I work for the Opportunity Alliance. I work for Catholic Charities. And I do have many experience when it comes to working with folks with different cultures and folks who are coming from different areas in the world. Before I start working for the Department of Education, I work with folks who were survivors of torture, clients, folks who were oppressed and tortured in prisons in their countries because of the beliefs that they have, whether it is religious beliefs, whether it was political beliefs, and those are folks who live in here in the state of Maine, and many of those folks have their children going to public schools in Maine, so you might have one way or other teach their children in the state of Maine. So that is who I am. Can go to the next slide. So what is cultural responsiveness? Cultural responsiveness teaching, and those of you who are teachers do know this, is a approach that makes meaningful connection between what the student learn in the school and what their home culture looks like, what their experience look like, what their language looks like, and their life experiences in general. So the connection that we have with those children and also embracing what they bring into our classrooms, we should really take a look at that and say, okay, this kid is bringing some skills that my other students may not have. So as educators, it is really very important to acknowledge that and, you know, make sure that child feels safe in her or his classroom, in your classroom rather. And many people kind of mix cultural responsiveness to cultural competency. When we are talking about cultural competency, it means that you must know each and every student in your class, their culture, what it is. And to be honest with you, none of us can do that. There is no way we can know each and every person that we meet who's coming from different countries to know their cultures. And I talked about this a lot. Someone I met once said that, oh, so-and-so came from Africa. You must speak their language. So I had to correct that person and say, Africa is a continent with 54 countries and over 3,000 languages. So we kind of mix those things together, and we just want to make sure as educators, we know what we really see in our classrooms and what those children are bringing to our classrooms. Next slide, please. And you can add to it, by the way, Nina, anytime you want to jump in and add to that. So when we are seeing someone who is from another country, we just see what is on tip of the iceberg, right? The food, you know, the music, kind of music they play, the language they speak, the way they look, just like I'm looking right now, the way I look right now. That's what we see. That's the visual piece that we are looking into. But there is so much, as we all know, underneath that, you know, the nations that they're coming from, the expectations they have, the kind of values they have in their countries. What is the body language that they use? You know, in my country, we use so much body language rather than the spoken words. And in my country, I'm from Somalia. Somalia was colonized by the British in the north, and in the south we were colonized by the Italians. So you can tell easily those of us who lived in the south, excuse me, do speak with our hands and gestures and making a lot of, you know, gestures. But the folks that are coming from the northern side of the country just speak straightforward. So you can tell that's the British culture that they have, right? And those are the people who are like my father and my grandfathers at the time. So we see those things underneath. And also one of those things that in this underneath is how we talk to our children, how we raise our kids. There are so many different ways that we have when we are raising our children that are different than the Western culture here. The way that we communicate with our elders. I mean, when I first come to the United States, I see a child, let's say maybe 9, 8 years old, who is calling a 50-year-old person by their first name. I was really shocked. Well, you don't do that. You say auntie, uncle, you know, or Mr. And it was really surprising to me, you know, these young people are calling this elderly person with their first name. So that is what you see when you are coming from other countries. The way they are doing, eating food, for example. One of my kids was watching a video of my family back home, and they were eating, you know, one big plate. Everybody was eating from that big plate. And my kids were like, oh my God, what are they doing? Stop it. They use a fork. I said, that's not how people do. They just eat together like that. So we have to take a look at what is that deeper cultural folks have, and let's not stuck on that top piece of the iceberg. Anything that you want to add to, Nina, before I jump?
You know, it just really makes me think about the broad kind of overview that you just provided. There are so many pieces that we don't know necessarily, and I think that speaks to people's assumptions and how we make assumptions based on what we know or what we see, when really we're only seeing what you see here is the tip of the iceberg, right? So if you think about all those things that are underneath that maybe we don't know or that we don't see, and we're making assumptions, I think that it is just a good reminder to really step back and go, okay, what is it that I don't know? And what can I learn from trying to understand, you know, who this child is, who this parent is, where do they come from, all of those pieces before I make my assumptions about what they do or what they don't do. And, you know, I think that that's really a powerful thing to always think about, is this iceberg image of what you see and what you don't see.
Yeah, that's a good point, Nina. And that assumption, which is a human thing, usually we just assume things right away and say, oh, such and such and such and such, but that is not true. But instead of, assuming what that is, rather ask and say, hey, are you from Somalia? I'm just going to put Somalia on the map because I'm from there. Instead of saying, oh, you must be from this and this place. I watched a video, I don't know, most of you might have seen it too. Where are you from? There is a man, Anglo-American man and an Asian American woman, and he's asking her, where are you from? And she's like, San Francisco, California. I was like, no, where are you from? She's like, San Francisco, California. I was born and raised here. And then she just reversed that and asked him, where are you from? He's like, I'm from here, So my kids always talk about they're from Atlanta, Georgia, because that's where they were born. But some people say, oh, but you're Somali. No, I'm not. I am American. I was born and raised in this country. So assumptions, let's just put that aside and just ask. And I know it's very hard for some of us to ask questions because we don't want to be wrong. We don't want to be, embarrassed, but it's okay. It's okay because that's the only way we can learn, to ask questions, even if we are older people. I learn every single day for something new from my children because they speak language that I don't understand. So I say, okay, what is that? What is that? So. Next slide, please. So this is something that I use a lot on the trainings that I do, is identity wheel. So for example, my good friend, Emilia, was talking one day when we were doing this training, and she said, when I'm in a room full of men and women who look like me, I don't feel, alone or anything. But if I am in a room that is all men, then she feels that, oh my goodness, I'm the only woman here. So we as a human beings need to make sure that we know where we at. We know who we are, and we know what culture that we bring into that space. For me, it's the same. I'm always the person who looks like me. Even if there is a Black people in that same room, I'm this person who's wearing this in that room, which really doesn't make me feel isolated or singled out or feel however we're gonna say it, because I get used to it. I don't feel, oh my goodness, I'm the only person here. I don't have any anxiety about that. Because again, I know our state, we are 97% white. So we have to embrace that as a human beings and say, okay, we are in a state that has a lot of Caucasian Americans in the state. So let's embrace that. Let's embrace that and understand that, and also say, okay, I'm here and I'm part of this community that I'm in right now, right? And as long as we do that, I think everything is gonna fall into places. And again, my layers are layers and layers and layers of different layers. When it comes to an immigrant, I am. When it comes to Black, I am. When it comes to female, I am. So again, as educators, if we know who we are, where we're coming from, and understanding also our children in our classrooms, who they are and what they are bringing into our classrooms, their nationality, their origins, even the socioeconomic, some of our children live in a low income in our state. And sometimes it's very difficult for that child to be part of other children who may have a nicer shoes or nicer shirt or nicer, baseball cap. So let's just also embrace that as well. One of my colleagues at the DOE was talking about how when he was sixth grader, he will go to school with one sweatpants, suit. And that doesn't mean that he only has that, because both his mom and dad are very well educated people. They provide for him and his siblings. They got enough money for everything, but that's what he likes. That's what he loves, and he wants to wear that. So instead of saying, oh my goodness, this child must be very poor and doesn't have this, let's just say, okay, maybe he loves this outfit that he brings in. Or maybe he have 10 outfits that looks like that, and he just keep on wearing the different ones. So
Hey,
any
Decca,
question? Yeah.
there's a couple of questions in the chat that I think you could answer. So one was more of a comment, but it kind of ties into the next question is, how do we ask someone where they're from without coming across rude if we ask those questions? That can be tricky, I think, sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, for us for you guys as educators, it's really easy for you to ask those questions because you have those children in your classrooms, right? And once you have those enrollments, I've seen a lot of enrollments. It automatically says African American, although you are coming from Congo, Rwanda, Somalia, whatever. It already gives that in the enrollment in the schools. But I think once the family comes in and you are meeting with that family, you can ask, oh, by the way, where are you from? And if you also throw in, let's say, oh, we have children in our classrooms who are from Somalia, from Iraq, from Congo, where are you from? That is a really, really respectful way of asking. And many of us will not take that in an offensive way or anything like that. People will tell you where they're from. I tell you a story. When I first came to the United States, I lived in Atlanta, Georgia, and that is a whole different world, by the way. When I came to this country, I did speak English very well. Then I went to the South, and I was like, what are these people talking? So my husband had to translate for me for a while. I was working in a hotel, and I don't know if any of you know John Amos. He's an African-American actor. I didn't know him at the time, to be honest. And he said, oh, you look like you're from Somalia. I said, of course, yeah, I am. And he said it, how are you in Somali to me? And I was really, really surprised by that. I'm like, oh my goodness, you speak Somali. So the reason that I'm saying this is that learn other languages, how to say hello, how are you, or thank you. So that's what I do. I learned so many languages, how to say thank you and hi, and makes me break that ice when I talking to folks from other countries, especially when I work for the city of Portland. I had a lot of clients that I did not understand their language, and I had to use the interpreter lines, but I at least learned how to say thank you and how are you. So those are other tricks that you can use and learning how to say hello. I hope that kind of answer. What's the other question?
Yep.
Nina, I'm sorry.
So there's a great point that somebody made that I think that this ties back to the iceberg slide that we had around that even us as teachers, children and families are only seeing the tip of our iceberg as well. So what they see as a teacher, or whatever role you're in, but we have a lot of stuff underneath the surface as well. And so I think that it's also important to recognize that and what we're presenting to people, could be good, bad, or everything in between, but always kind of remember that we have those underlying pieces as well.
Yeah. Is that a question or just a comment, right?
Yeah, it was just a comment.
Somebody also has a nice comment. Say where you're from first, and then ask the person where you're from. That is absolutely wonderful. I love that. Yeah. That's a great way of also breaking the ice.
There's a great question here about talking about families that have maybe just moved here, whatnot, and this question specifically says, what if your student doesn't want to remember the past? Is it or isn't ready to share? How do we get to know them if they aren't interested in sharing? So I think that crosses both with children and their families.
Yes. And there is so many people who do not want to share. And I've seen an 8th grader once said that I'd rather lie about my past than say the truth, because the truth could have killed me and my family where we were. So I would say give them a space, give them a chance to come around, and let them build that relationship together between you and that student. And kids are amazing human beings. Once you have that relationship with them, they will just open up for you. I've seen kids who were so much open for their teachers than their parents, because their parents have these strict rules at home, so they cannot open up. And this is what I do on my other trainings that I do for immigrant community members, and make them understand that we are raising children who are American kids. They were born and raised here. They totally have a different culture. So if you want them to learn your own culture and embrace the one that they have, you have to meet them in the middle, right? We cannot say, hey, you have to wear this hijab because you are Muslim and this and this and that. Not explaining what that means. What is the depth of the meaning of wearing the hijab? And if you read the Quran, it says you can wear all of those things when you are in puberty, but you will see kids as young as 5 years old wearing it, right? So we have to make sure the kids do understand, because they will challenge you. They're not like African kids who are born and raised in Africa who are like, yes, mom, yes, dad. These American kids will challenge you and ask you questions. I have 3 of them here. So I have to level with them and just, talk to them in a way that they are adults. And the more that you do that, the better. For example, my daughter was wearing her headscarf. She started doing that when she was 6th grade. She took it off when she was in 9th grade. And I couldn't say do it or don't do it, because this is how she feels. Does that make her a bad Muslim? Absolutely not. She prays, she fasts, she's good to people, she respects others. So that is what the religion is telling us to do. But we cannot force them. If we force them to do things that they don't want to do, they will fall off the wagon sooner or later. And that is with all children, not only for immigrant kids, but all kids. We should not be, doing things that we don't want to be done to us, right? Oh. So I don't know, maybe I go off. I told you, Nina, I'm gonna get off.
You're okay. You're okay.
All right. So
next slide,
please. Thank
okay.
you. So some helpful tips for supporting cultural responsiveness. Value diversity, right? We have to value that, because each and every person that we meet who is coming from different places, we just have to embrace that. And some of us, when we hear diversity, we think black or white. That is old, that is young, that is sexual orientation, that is disability. It's so big when we're talking about diversity. And some of our children really have this way of keeping it to themselves if they are different from the kids that their peers. So if we value all of them in one place and say, yes, you bring in a really, really amazing skills to this classroom, to each and every one of them, regardless of their sexual orientation, ethnicity, disability, they will open up and they will reach out and they will have that communication piece that they are really need or longing for. So let's just value that first and foremost. And this is something that we are also doing at the DOE level. We just put together diversity, inclusion, and equity committee that is going to look into the things that we do in the DOE. Is it equitable? Is it diverse? It is inclusive. So I'm really excited about that. Be committed and willing to change. It's hard, I know. It's hard for some of us to change, but we have to, especially as educators, we have to change. We have to keep up with our kids. I learn from my children every single day because they speak language that I don't even know what it is. They just have this dialect that even if they are talking to their friends, I can't understand, so I have to ask them. So we have to committed and willing to change. Respect differences. Again, there is a lot of divisive things that is happening in our country right now because of the different places that most of us are coming from, and things that we are hearing from social media, things like that. As long as we're respecting each other, different viewpoints, different political views, if we just put that aside and respect the human the person is, I think that will speak louder than any other actions. Work with others. I know that you guys are ethics and that's all you do. That's your expertise. You're always working with families. You're always working with teachers. You're always working with your principals and school staff. But it's hard for some people to do that. Some people think that they know everything and they are the expertise of something, and they like that. But in my culture, there's a saying, what you do not know is within your brother or sister. Your brother or sister doesn't mean that your biological brother or sister. It means your brother and sister, humans. So if I do not know something and Nina knows more about it, I will really go to Nina and say, hey, Nina, do you know about this? And do you know this? And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. We are humans and we're learning every single day. So just work with other folks. And I'll give you an example. Today we had, yesterday, I think we got an email from the commissioner's office to weigh in on project that some of the commissioner's folks were working on. And I had this training today and we started like 8 o'clock Zooming, and I was already Zoomed out, and I was like, should I just scream and say, I don't want to do this? No, but we just come together and we put our minds together and we come up with good recommendation. And I was happy after that. I was really happy about it. So the more we work together, the better outcomes that we have. We talked about this a little bit, acquire cultural knowledge. As I talked about earlier, that person who said you're from Africa, you must speak this person's language. Let's not assume that. Just if you have kids coming from Angola in your class, know that they do speak Lingala and they do speak Portuguese. And if you have kids coming from Congo, know that they are speaking French, or Somali or Iraqis, they speak Arabic. So acquire that culture. And sometimes in Iraqi culture, folks are either Sunnis or Shias. So get to know that also, what is the Shias and what is the Sunnis, so what's the difference? So get to know your classroom. The more you do that and share that information with your students, the more they are going to be really excited about, because you put that extra time, extra effort to get to know who they are and where they're coming from. They will open up for you and be, connected with you in that way. And be patient. People, who is patient these days? I am not. We are not patient because we got so much in our plates these days. But if you can, try. That is the best thing you can do. I mean, you are teachers, you are educators, you already have that. You have more patience than I do, because I got 3 kids and that's enough. That's enough, and I'm always fighting with them. So, but you chose to be in a classroom that has 30 students, 24, 30 students. And that is a patience, if you ask me. That's, nobody else have a more patience than an educator for my point of view. So do you want to add anything to Nina? Sorry.
The only thing that I would add is that all of this takes time. We talk about being patient and valuing diversity and working with others. It takes time, right? Like, this isn't something you just flip a switch and it happens. And the timeline is very different for every person. And so I might build a relationship with a child or family in a week and, it be okay. And it might take me 3 months to build a similar relationship with another student and family. So, I think it looks a little bit different for everybody, as it should, just like you or I. So I think, be patient, but also understand that it takes time and nothing is going to be the same for everybody.
Yeah, well said. Well said. That is true. And somebody had a nice comment about the stereotype. You're right. We shouldn't be stereotyping for anything whatsoever, because you have most of these kids that are in your classrooms are coming from a trauma background. Most of them, whether it is a civil war, whether it is domestic violence, torture, they come in from a space that is not really safe. And that's the reason that they came here in this country, to be safe. And I remember one of my daughter, when she was in sophomore, she told me that she got really angry at her teacher because one of her friends who are from Iraq was wearing an LL vest. And the teacher made a joke saying that, oh, is that a bomb? Is that a bomb you're wearing? But this particular kid is a kid who grew up in Mosul, one of the most dangerous cities in Iraq. And when his parents asked him to buy a milk or something from the store, which was not that far away from his house, he will duck so many times before he get to store, and duck again so many times from snipers and people who are shooting, so that he can come back home safe. So saying that to a child who really experienced what it's looked like to be in a war zone, it was really hurtful, very hurtful. And I really felt very bad. And she was really angry that day when she came home and shared that information with me. So, yeah.
That's a great point. There's a comment in the chat around defining the word diversity. We could probably spend another 3 hours just on that. So, while we're talking about different kinds of, diverse topics and things like that, I think it's also noteworthy to kind of talk about the differences in socioeconomic statuses as well, because there is a very wide range in Maine. A lot of children living in severe poverty, and that in itself is a diverse group. So it's not always about religion and culture in those terms. It's also very much about generational poverty and families who have lived here for hundreds of years, and understanding how do you value diversity in those families and respect those differences, and all along those same lines as well, because we do have a lot of that in Maine across the board.
Oh, 100%. One good friend of mine who grew up in rural Maine was talking about how if she says her last name, people can say, oh, they're poor, because of that last name she had. Because again, rural Maine, we have small communities. So each and everybody knows each other. So if you are really a poor family, you are known already. And imagine that child going to school and being labeled because of what they don't have. It is something to be really mindful of. Anything else in the chat room that we look into?
Oh, there's all kinds of comments.
Great group of people. I love these people. You guys are really engaging. I love it.
We have lots of great
Absolutely
comments, and definitely things that I'm like, yeah, I haven't thought about that.
Yes, drug, substance use. Yeah, absolutely. One of those, suicide, sexual assault, a lot of things that are, and the COVID-19, by the way, is really made this thing even bigger, because now these kids were, school was their escape, but now they are home where that violence is happening. So once we go back to school, I think we're going to see a lot of kids who are traumatized.
Yeah, we definitely have seen, we've seen a decrease in reports to Child Protective, and we're guessing or speculating that it's because families are home and are more isolated right now. What we're anticipating is that those numbers will jump very high once home visiting can be started again, once children are hopefully, and we'll see, back in school in the fall. So it's, we expect things are going to shift. Families with substance misuse, infants being born exposed. There's a lot that's probably going to come to the forefront after, I shouldn't say after the crisis is done, because let's be honest, it's probably never going to just end. But once things kind of get back to a new normal, I think we're going to see some different things come forward. So,
okay.
All right.
Move right along.
Oh, yay.
Oh, yay.
Okay.
I love this video. So
anything that you would like participants to think about while they're watching this, Decca?
Just, how to build that relationship with your students, how to build a way of having a classroom that is consistent, and how you're gonna do that.
Okay. All right. So this video is like 3-4 minutes. It's not long at all.
No.
Hopefully it works.
That's why I chose it.
Can you hear it? Okay. Hang on a minute.
We can't hear it.
Duh.
This happened with another presenter, and she found if she closed out of a bunch of her other tabs, like her mail and other things, that then it would work.
I probably should have done that prior. Okay, I'm trying to close out of, I have like a million things open. Go figure. Okay, so I will try it, and I'm going to turn up the volume really loud on my laptop. And then we'll see what happens. Still nothing?
Nope.
Nina, I think there's a setting in Zoom where you have to allow participants to hear video. I know Andrea always has to push that.
Share computer sound.
There you go.
Oh, was it? Thanks, Dee. Okay, let's try this again. I don't know.
And it's
Hey, you got it.
My name is Robert Sauter, and I am a kindergarten teacher at Leonard Flynn Elementary School, and it's something that I love doing. I traveled to Taiwan and to Turkey where I taught English, and that's when I realized at 21 that, wow, I love this thing called teaching. Even before we set foot in the classroom, I try to make sure that my students understand that I see them. And each child comes in one at a time, and I shake her or his hand, give them a touch on the shoulder, and wish them a good morning. Robert, Eric, good morning, Eric, how are you? I realized, over the years that my role is as a facilitator in developing this concept of community, and not necessarily as a teacher of this, because my students come to me already with a well-developed sense of what a community is in the context of their families. And if we need even more of a reminder about what it is that people in a community do, we can refer to our community agreements. That's a really big part of the whole first portion of the kindergarten year, is helping students realize that we can together create agreements. Because you know what, you guys, you don't have to use the iMessage and the cleanup just here at school. Each student has an opportunity to be the student.
Whoops. Sorry, I tried to open the chat and, you know, my bad.
If we need even more of a reminder about what it is that people in a community do, we can refer to our community agreements. That's a really big part of the whole first portion of the kindergarten year, is helping students realize that we can together create agreements. Because you know what, you guys, you don't have to use the iMessage and the cleanup just here at school. Each student has an opportunity to be the student of the day. And it's one way that I help that student feel confident in her or his abilities to be a leader. It's a way that I develop personal relationships with individual students, while at the same time getting a sense of what it is that I need to help them with academically, or finding out what is it that they're really excelling in at this point. I like to win. Let's get your counting fingers ready and figure out how many words that's going to be. I like to. How many? It's going to be the first. A big part of the community that we build here in our classroom is helping children understand that they are authors, that they are going to be doing this amazing thing called writing. And during Writer's Workshop is a time when I really get to draw on what it is that my students are bringing to the classroom, and I'm using what it is that I know about their interests, what I know about their home lives and their cultures, and bringing all of that to bear on that differentiated instruction that's going to support my students in making the leap to the next level as writers. We might get good ideas for our own stories. Kindergartners come to school with such awe, such wonder about the world, and one of the ways that I help my students continue on that path of wonderment is by making them feel really, really welcomed as they are, who they are.
I love that video.
All right. So what are your thoughts here?
So I chose this video because it starts with the base, the kindergartens. If we share that community building and community relationship and teaching kids as young as kindergartens, I think they're gonna grow in an adult who are open-minded, who welcome different kids or different peers, and do not afraid of talking to different kids.
I have to say there was a comment in the chat a little bit ago about welcoming every student every day, and even those staff members who are not in the classroom. So front office staff, could be a janitor, right? It's everybody's work. It's everybody's job to make sure that children and families feel welcome and included in that school environment. And so I thought that that was a really powerful comment.
Yeah. Oh, I agree 100%. I did my internship at Lyman Moore, and the first person that the kids see is the front office person. And she's the first person that they see when they come to class, when they come to school, and talk to her and say hi to her. And it was really beautiful thing to see that it's not only her, but also the janitor, the nurse, you know, the nutrition folks. Everybody who is in that school grounds is as important as the educators. So as long as we keep that in mind, that is the best thing that we can do for these kids coming to school and just greeting them for every single day. And somebody mentioned earlier, some of these kids at school is their safe space. Their safe space. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So, in keeping track of our time, it's about quarter.
Thank you for doing that. I always get off.
So I will, there's a couple other comments that I'll follow up on, but before we do that, are there more specific training ideas, topics, anything that you would like to see in the future? I know that we are talking about DOE providing some additional supports, and it would be great to hear. You can just put it in the chat. That way we can go through it after what you think might be useful. We also recognize that people are kind of winding down the school year and probably looking forward to a summer vacation. So keep that in mind as you think about topics or pieces that you would like to think about this summer. Let's see. Any other final thoughts, Decca, before we?
Well, thank you so much for allowing us to come and talk to you and share this space with you. Again, I cannot thank you enough for the work that you do. You are basically heroes in my eyes and all the things that you do. And I want to embrace that. Today, I'm embracing you for all you do. Thank you so much.
So I am going to put the, whoa, the chat's going crazy. The link in the chat box for, there's the link for the survey and to get your contact hour. There was also a wondering about the video link. So if you give me just a moment, I will.
Yeah, while Nina is doing that, I would like to visit you in your schools, because some of my the work that I do is to provide professional development for different schools in the state. So when this COVID-19 thing goes away, I would love to visit and see what you guys do in your own schools. I would love that.
All right. So, any final thoughts, questions? Feel free to put them in the chat. And if there's any additional questions that we didn't get to, then we will go through and make sure that we answer them. We are going to send out one question Q&A kind of form, so that way you're not getting multiples. So I will do that as well. So Here is the link, and I think somebody had already posted it anyway. Here's the link to that video that was in there. So that way you have that as well.
I never been to Leamington. I would love that, Heather. It would be an adventure for me.
Becca, I think your schedule's about to blow up as soon as we're able to get into school buildings.
I would love that. I'm ready for to see humans.
I know. Yeah. All right. So if there's nothing else, it is 10 of 2, and we will give you back 10 minutes of your day. I hope that you all enjoy some much needed sunshine, long weekend. So definitely enjoy, and let us know if you have any other questions, comments, and we'll go from there. All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.